Hello, one and all. Welcome back to the Douglas Podcast, the one and only podcast where I get paid nothing, but I still do it because I love it. My name is Douglas, and today we're talking about an issue very personal to me, very personal to a lot of people. We're talking about minimum wage because, oh boy, there's a lot to unpack with that. But before we get into that, today's episode of the Douglas Podcast is brought to you by capitalism. Do you like the suppression of workers? Do you enjoy using wages as a means to control the masses and a system that uplifts rich people while simultaneously putting down those who are barely able to make do? Then capitalism is right for you. All right. Let's get into it because I got a lot of hot topics with minimum wage. First of all, what is minimum wage? Because what it means now is very different from what it originally meant. Now, federally, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, which means that any job is legally required to pay you at least $7.25 an hour. Now, most jobs don't. Most jobs pay you more because if you had a job that was paying $10 an hour and a job that was paying $7.25 an hour, you'd go with the $10 an hour one. But there are some jobs for less. Tip-based jobs, such as like waiters, restaurant workers, there's a kind of a loophole to where they can be paid as low as like $4 an hour because the extra $3.25 is made up in tips. And now I do want to say these are very outlier cases. These are very extreme cases. In my experience, this is not the majority of cases because that's not how the free market works. If a job pays more than that, then they're going to be more attractive. And the job that pays less is not going to have people that want to work there. But it's still a very big issue. Because in 2009, that was federally determined. That was 14 years ago, has not changed. Federally, the minimum wage has not gone up. Now, there have been many bills in different states to raise the minimum wage. California is like increasing it like $1 per year until it's going to get up to like $20 an hour, I think. But it's still not enough because what happens is jobs are going to eventually increase their pay, but you know what else is increasing? The price of goods, the price of housing, that's all going to increase as well, and it's not enough to match. And another thing is a lot of places that do tipping factor that into the minimum wage. So it's like, well, you're making $4 an hour on tips, which means we only have to pay you $16 an hour, and the rest is in tips. And you are making $20 an hour. It's just in tips. And that's not entirely fair because while for the most part tipping is pretty consistent week by week, it's not a guarantee. You're not guaranteed that $4 an hour. It's just an estimate based on what people tip. And say there's a week where I don't know what happens, but people tip less, you're going to make less money in that week, and that's not great. It's with the advent of credit card tipping, people can make fun of it all you want of anytime you pay for anything, there's a screen that says like add tip, and I've got my own opinions on that. But for what it's worth, it has increased the amount of tips that food service workers get, which is a good thing. Because the more money you can make, the better. But here is now where the issue comes full swing. Because a person making minimum wage, working full-time, can barely support two people, themselves and one other person, and they're below the poverty line. I have an article with the math. But if you're working $7.25 an hour and you're working full-time, you make $15,000 a year, which falls below the poverty line for a household of two. Now, this article is from 2013, which just goes to show you, because that's 10 years ago, the poverty line was 15,156. Since COVID and the economy crashing and all that stuff, poverty line has gone way up because the price of living has also gone way up. In 2023, you could not support one person on $15,000 a year, because that's a little over $1,000 a month. There's nowhere where you can find a rent for $1,000 a month. It's just not possible. So federally, minimum wage is not enough to support one person. You'd have to have like roommates and split the costs, or like live in a room in someone's house. And that's not great, because up until 1980, minimum wage was meant for one person working full-time at minimum wage was able to support their wife and two kids. That's why it's been very popularized, the American dream, wife, two kids, the dad works, because back in the day, you could really do that. In 1980, which is the last year that it was possible, you could make yourself above the poverty line. And in 1968, minimum wage was $1.60 an hour, which just meant that you made $3,328 every year. But that puts you above the $2,800 poverty line for a family of three at that time. Which, what all this means in very simpler words is that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, one person working a minimum wage job was able to provide for their family. And now, one person working a minimum wage job is not able to provide for themselves. Now, again, still caveats. A lot of jobs don't pay federal minimum wage. A lot of jobs pay over that because they need people to work, and that's a great thing. Like the job I work at, you don't make $7.25 an hour. I'm making close to $20 an hour, which is great. That's almost 3 times as much, which is good. And a person working at that could definitely provide for themselves, but they definitely could not provide for a wife and 2 kids on just that one income alone. And I'm going to get into my opinion on all this stuff because it's upsetting. It's upsetting. But before that, here is 2 minutes of keyboard sounds. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. And now into my opinions on all this. Thankfully, most jobs don't pay federal minimum wage. Whenever you see like, oh, minimum wage is $7.25, that is a little bit of a bias. There are some states where the minimum wage is $7.25 legally. A lot of other states, thankfully, have upped their federal minimum wage. Like I said, in California, it's $16 an hour right now. It's going up to 20. There's other places where it's being raised to like 12, 13, 14. Even so, a lot of jobs don't pay minimum wage. A lot of jobs will pay more than minimum wage to attract workers, because that's what it is. All the jobs are saying nobody wants to work, people are lazy, but the truth is that they're just not paying enough, because people are 100% going to go for the $20 an hour job over the $10 an hour job. That's just basic. Why would you pick a job where you're making half? You want to go with the job that pays more. Even with all of this, though, it's still not enough. When I say that a person on a one minimum wage income was able to afford for a family, it wasn't just like renting a room. They were able to like purchase a house. That's why it was called minimum wage, because originally it was supposed to be the minimum amount you needed to make to buy a house and support your family, buy groceries, all that stuff. And if you were just making that much, it was good to go. And now you can barely afford to rent an apartment. Not only because apartment prices are so high, but there's also an income requirement. You need to make 3 times the income per month. And prices differ everywhere, but I'd say $2,000 a month for an apartment is pretty usual for an apartment, at least in California. And 3 times that's $6,000 a month. You're making $72,000 a year to be able to qualify for a 1-bedroom apartment. If you're making $72,000 a year, you're going to be buying a house. You're not going to be looking for an apartment. And so that's when you like get roommates and split rent, but you need like a guarantor. It's very hard on a minimum wage to afford an apartment, and it is a minimum wage issue, but it's also a housing issue. Places are way overinflated. There are a lot of empty houses, and I might go in more on this in a different podcast, but basically companies buy out empty apartments and leave them empty to drive up the prices of other apartments, so it seems more scarce, and so that you'll pay more for it because there's nowhere else for you to live. And it's easy to say like, oh, jobs should just pay more, but apartments should cost less. And what I think is a really dumb argument is people are like, well, if we pay workers more, then our goods are going to get more expensive. That's a very common boomer idea of like trickle down economics, where it's like, well, if things are good for the worker, then they're going to turn around and be bad. And that's what they want you to think. That idea is not true. It's just meant to make you complacent. And I'm using a lot of conspiracy buzzwords, and I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but if the minimum wage goes up, your burger is not going to cost 10 times as much. What'll happen is companies are already raising the price of their food and their products because they want to make more profits, and they can blame whatever they want for it. But like, oh, this bothered me. For example, Dollar Tree raised its prices from $1 for everything to $1.25. People are outraged. I mean, it's the dollar store, it's not a big deal. But what happened is that it's just that Dollar Tree wants to make more profit. And you can think like, oh, what profit are they making for $1? They are making significant profits. And instead of using that extra 25 cents per item to raise their workers' wages maybe hire more of them so they're less stressed. Just all straight profits for corporate. And that's what's happening anyways. So I would rather food prices go up to support the workers making the food than to support the business people that just want higher profit margins. And I don't think that the price of stuff is going to go up super greatly, because the price of stuff where minimum wage is $16 an hour is the same as stuff where it's $10 an hour, because it's all corporate profit. If it truly was an issue of companies making not money, then most companies would be barely getting by. They'd be like, okay, we need to cut as much of our profit giving it to workers. And I'm not saying they need to make no profit. Like, they can make profit, but they're making way too much profit to complain about giving a dollar raise to all their workers. There was a time where they called on Disney to raise the minimum wage for their Disneyland employees by I think less than $1. And Disneyland's like, we can't do it. We don't have the profits to do it. And that's wrong. You're wrong. It's just not true. There needs to be more attention given to the people that are working minimum wage, that are working from paycheck to paycheck. Nobody should be working paycheck to paycheck. You have no opportunity to save money, to afford moving anywhere, down payment on a house, deposit when you move to a new place. You can't afford that if you're spending all your money on rent, gas, groceries. It's not fair. It's not possible. Workers nowadays are kind of just stuck because they're not making enough to move anywhere. They're barely making enough where they are. And it's really important to know that it wasn't always like this. That this has been a change that has been happening over the years, and nobody wants to do anything about it. The inflation rate has gone up way higher than the minimum wage has risen, meaning the cost of goods have gone up and the people's wages have not gone up at all. Since 2009, minimum wage has not been raised. And that means since 2009, people are like, oh, no, they don't need more money. And that's not true, because things are more expensive than ever because of COVID, because of inflation, because things are rising in price. That's what happens. And $725 an hour was not enough in 2009. It's not enough now, and it will never be enough. Needs to be way higher. Way higher. And there's nothing we can really do about it other than paying with our wallets. If you refuse to work at a job that pays you less than what you deserve, that's great. Then they have no workers, no one to work, and they have no choice but to raise their minimum wage, the wage they pay their workers. If you boycott places that are paying their workers terribly, then they're going to realize that they need to pay their workers more. And that's really all it is to it. There's no negative consequence for raising your workers' wages. Only benefits, because if you're getting paid more, you're going to want to work harder. You're going to be more loyal to the company. You are willing to put in those hours that they need you to work. And companies don't think about that because they're more concerned with profit, how little they can pay people and how little they can have people work and still have the store function, which is terrible and is getting worse and worse year by year. And eventually it's going to come to a point where something's going to give. Either businesses are going to start failing, workers are going to stop working, or apartments are going to stop getting bought. Something's going to give. Some shoe's going to drop. And there's going to need to be a change. But anyways, those are my opinions. I am not going to play you an updated version of me saying the name Bella. This one's only a minute. And when we get back, I'm going to talk to you about a little game thing that maybe I said a little too late, but we'll see. Bella! 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 Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that. And now onto the section where I get to talk about a video game. And today I'm not going to talk about one specific video game. I'm going to talk about a little promotion that's going on. Because there is a company called No Gravity Games. They make lots of small games. They're like an indie gaming company. And going on right now is their 12 Days of Switchmas, where all you have to do is you sign up for their newsletter, you get a coupon code for a free game on the Nintendo Switch, and then starting today for the next 12 days, every day, you get a free Nintendo Switch game. And it's really great. They did this last year. They also did a similar thing for Halloween. If you've kept up with it enough, it's gonna be a lot of like re-giving. But if you're just joining now, or you've only gotten a few, now would be the time to do it, because the only stipulation is that in order to get the game for free, you need to have the previous day's game. So you gotta continue every day getting it until the very end where you can get the final game. And they're pretty cool. Full disclosure, I haven't played many of the games, but these people put a lot of effort into it. They seem like some pretty cool games, and I think it's just important for everyone to know about this cool free games you can get. And if you want to support them, buy some of their other games. You know, if you buy the games that you missed, then you get to continue getting the free ones. But yeah, that's my PSA for today. No Gravity Games, sign up for their newsletter. You get a coupon code for a free game. Once you get that game, you can start unlocking the other games, but you have to do it every single day or else you'll lose out. And then you get 13 free games. And isn't that great? And you're supporting an indie developer, which is really nice and really touching, because they need your support. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed my ramblings on today about video games and minimum wage. If you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with any suggestions you have for future things. I've got a notepad here with all my future topics, so if there's anything you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments below. If you're still not asleep, that's okay. I've got a whole playlist of shows that you can listen to. Plenty to watch. Watch all of them. But anyways, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. And I will see you guys next time.